Now moving forward into our optical drives. You know, CDs, DVDs, all that stuff. Here's the deal. Here's a little illustration for you. You got your polycarbonate layer, your lacquer layer, your aluminum layer, and inside there you got these burn pits. How is this all done? It's all done with lasers. Okay, so it's no longer magnetic. That's the main thing. You're talking about optical lasers here. I'm not worried right now about you understanding how these lasers actually make the ones and zeros appear on the disk. Again, feel free to read up all about it if that's what you're into. What I do want you to know, however, is what the different types of optical drives are. You first of all have your CD drive, right? Your compact disc drive. We have our CD-ROM, okay, which is ROM stands for read-only memory. Okay, so that basically means you have a CD-ROM, right? You went out and got a disc with music on it. You can read it, but that's it. You can't write to it. You can read to it. That's it. We have CD-R, and the R stands for recordable, and that means that you can what's called burn information onto the CD, okay, or you can record onto the CD, but you can only do it once. Once it's been recorded to, that's it. It essentially goes from being a CD-R to becoming a CD-ROM, right? Because it's been burned to, it's been written to, it's been recorded on, and it's been what's called finalized, which means that's it. It's done. Unless you, of course, have a CD-RW, which is rewritable, okay, and that means that you actually can write to this disk, and then you can actually erase and write again to the disk. Your CD storage capacity is typically 650 megabytes. That's considered to be too small for most things in today's world. So we then move on to this thing called the DVD, which has an interesting story behind it because it was originally called a digital video disc, but then it was argued that you could do more than just video. So then they wanted to call it the digital versatile disc. And eventually, the official name just became DVD. So rather than worry about what the letters actually stand for, it's a DVD. Don't worry what the letters stand for. So again, we have our DVD-ROM, okay, which means if you have a DVD-ROM, it's like you went out and you bought a movie, and that's it. You can read it. That's it. That's all you can do with it. Now, when you get to the recordable ones, right, you have the DVD-R, but it's DVD minus R and DVD plus R. And this basically had to do with something called the DVD Forum, created a standard called DVD minus R, and the DVD Alliance came out with something called the plus R. And originally, these were two different standards that, well, they still are two different standards, but you know, they served different purposes. One was theoretically better for data, one was theoretically better for video, and some will still argue that point today. But the bottom line is that almost all DVD players, whether it's the type that you have hooked up to your TV at home or whether it's the type you have in your computer, they will fully support both standards. So again, the DVD-R is where you can record, but you can only record once. Whereas you have the DVD-RW, which is where you can record and erase and record again. Now, the other thing is the storage. A DVD stores 4.7 gigabytes of data, but that's if you have just a single-sided, but there's also double-sided. And again, that's also if you have what's called single layer, and there's also something called double layer. Okay, so keep in mind that if you want to get real fancy with double-sided, double-layer DVDs, you can get quite a bit of storage. And then we finally move to our Blu-ray disc, or BD. And again, we have our BD-ROMs, we have our BDRs, and then instead of BDRW, they decided to call it BDRE, which stands for record and erase. It's the same idea, though. Okay, you have the read-only, you have the one that you can record once, and then you have the kind that you can record multiple times. What is Blu-ray? Well, Blu-ray is, of course, high def, right? It's the high def standard. And again, we have our single layer and our double layer. And with Blu-ray, here's the thing. A standard Blu-ray disc can support up to 25 gigabytes of data, so quite a bit. And the reason why we need all that is because, well, again, high-def video uses up a lot of space. If you go to a double layer, you can double that. You can get to 50 gig. There are also mini disc versions that you'll find in certain home, camcorder type things, right? Video cameras, where you have a smaller version of it. And even those can support 7.8 gig with a single layer or 15.6 gig with a double layer. All right, so that's Blu-ray. And that's pretty much our optical discs.